And if you see Seth again, you owe him a donut.
He doesn't owe me a donut. I'll tell you a better story. I'll tell you who was coaching Johnson that year? Who?
Jason Rockmore?
Yeah. Was it Rockmore?
Probably.
Yeah, it was Rockmore. He fell asleep on Rockmore's couch, which was funny.
Who, my son?
Yes, your son.
Yeah, that is true, yeah.
We were doing the interview, and
he can wake up from a 12-hour nightly sleep. You put him in a car, and in 3 minutes, he's out.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into Access Sports Weekly. I'm Caleb Hutchins, joined by WilHart, Seth Chapman behind the camera. Bo Wilson not here today, so instead, we're bringing the Access Sports Weekly. And guys, how's everybody doing today?
Fine.
Pretty good.
Since Bo is not, since he's not here today, he's off today. It's time we have some fun.
Oh yeah, what was that you said earlier, Caleb? While the cat's away, the mice will play.
Exactly.
All right.
That's the plan.
So we're rats now?
So exactly.
He has no idea, but we bricked up the door to his office.
Well, so considering that office is also your office,
but
that might be a problem for you.
I took all my stuff out, and I'm going to operate from my car.
So, guys, let's go ahead and get straight into what happened last weekend in the high school football playoffs.
Well, that was very short banter.
Yeah, well, I'm not
usually Bo makes fun of me a lot more than that.
I'm trying to be nice to you, and also
Caleb's been here since like 4. He wants to go home.
Yeah, I've been here since about 5 in the morning. So
what's your point?
What's my point? I'm tired. That's my point. So
gotcha.
That's why I wanted to go ahead and get rolling on the podcast here. But
podcast? You mean webcast?
I mean
whatever this is.
Web show, web show is what I usually call it.
Podcast.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Boy, he is tired. Seth, you may need to take over.
It is. Listen,
I think that'd be even a bigger train wreck.
But here's the thing, though. I did get the intro right. And I got all the names right on the intro.
You did get all the names right.
Congratulations.
First try.
Mm-hmm. Congratulations.
So I feel like I'm already a leg up on Bo.
You are, at the moment.
Wow.
Awesome.
We'll see how it goes from here.
Wow.
So, with that said, let's go ahead and
Caleb 1, Bo 0.
Well, I don't know about Bo 0, but Caleb 1 for sure. Let's go ahead and get into what happened last week, and let's start off. Let's just start from the high classifications and work our way down. And Buford in Class 6A, boy, they just continue, Jeff, to roll. This time, Hughes is the victim, and Buford just jumped on him right out of the gates, and this game was over essentially before the halftime break.
I love Bo's lead on his story. This one was over before it began. I kind of had that, you never want to slight a team that gets to the Elite Eight, and particularly when they're having a career year, because there's always the Cinderella aspect or a team of destiny kind of thing, because you never really know. But it's Buford. Hughes had never been there before. Just my gut was telling me it could get ugly.
There's a Caddyshack reference in there somewhere. Cinderella story.
Wow, this is just. Yeah, I'm glad I'm back, guys. Really, I'm glad I'm back. It's wow. No, but I had a feeling that it could be ugly, just because we just know what Buford can do, what they've done, how they treat people when they come into Tom Ryden.
Yeah, which is very rude, and Buford's defense.
Yeah, they ought to rename it Tom Rude in the stadium. Because, I'm just kidding.
Hughes, Buford's defense just continues to be the star of the show. And Buford's offense is really good, and what they're doing with the 2-quarterback system with Ashton Daniels and Dylan Whitkey, they've got the 2-headed monster running back with Gabe Irvin Jr. and Victor Venn. All that stuff is great. But what the Buford defense is doing right now is really what's grabbing the headlines.
Yeah, it's almost criminal. Seriously, they are just absolutely they give no quarter and they give up very little. Hughes scored 15 points on them. I'm not sure how.
I know there was one 70-yard touchdown pass that they hit in that game,
and no offense to the Buford reserves, they must have had some reserves in. But when you look at what drives championships, I know that we're in the age of offense. I mean, when you have all coaches just, I want to score. That's the nature of the game nowadays. They're not even so much worried about their defense anymore. You just constantly put pressure with your offense. But Buford continues to show that you can win, and you can win big. and in dominating fashion with defense.
Well, I was talking to Jefferson coach Gene Cathcart a few weeks ago, and, one thing that I think is true about high school sports and really football in general at all levels now, there are more good and great offenses than there are good and great defenses, to what you said. So as a byproduct of that, the reason you start seeing some tighter games, I think, down the stretch of the playoffs, and I know that this one wasn't an example of it, but it might be this coming weekend, is, all of a sudden a team that has a great defense maybe hasn't seen another great defense all year.
Right.
And all of a sudden and a lot of teams with great defenses have great offenses too. Well, all of a sudden those great defenses finally start meeting up with each other down the road. That's why you generally, if you see great defensive games, we had one in Class 7A last week with Norcross and Colquitt County. Those two teams have been putting up points. Well, all of a sudden their defenses finally square off head to head, and you start getting tighter ball games and more defensive ball games. I think that's what Buford might be in for next week, but we'll get to the Valdosta game in a second. I think what Buford has done so far has been the most dominant and impressive, stretch in their last 11 games of anybody in Class 6A.
I don't think there's any doubt about it. With the previews and things that I do for each week's game, the top three scoring teams in 6A, we're talking defense, but the top three scoring teams in 6A, Buford, Westlake, Lee County, all advanced. Only two of the top four defenses, Buford and Lee County, advanced. But I'm going to just switch real quick to AA. We'll get back to Buford. And the reason I bring this up is three of the teams in AA, now they've got all those offenses in AA, but three of the teams that are into the Final Four, their defensive has slashed their points allowed per game in half. So defense is still supremely important. If you're good already going in, I think you have a chance to become even better. And you have to get good. You have to, at some point, no matter how good of an offensive team, Rabun County is the number one offensive team in the state, all classifications. They had to go to overtime, to win last week. You have to make some stops, and their defense made two key stops late in the game so they could win that game. You have to have some defense.
Well, let's move on from Buford to Jefferson. The Dragons advancing with a win over Carver Columbus. This was one that I actually had a chance to be on the call of on FM 102.9, 28-22. And this was a game that Jefferson got out to a good start in, 14-0. But Carver really fought back into the game, and that was something that Jefferson hasn't had to deal with a lot of this year. Most of Jefferson's games, they've cruised. They've won by 30, 40, 50, 60 points in some cases. I mean, they won a playoff game 65-0 just a couple of weeks ago. But this was a game that was really anybody's ball game. In the fourth quarter, it was 21-14. And Jefferson had to make the plays down the stretch to survive, and they did. And I think that's a testament to Jefferson sort of proving something that I think we kind of knew they had, but it's nice to get verification of it in the playoffs.
Yeah, they have been dominant all year. The tightest game they had was Rabun, and that game was tied.
Well, actually, the tightest game they had all year was Hart County, because remember, they won that one by 7.
Well, that is true.
Yeah.
But the Rabun game was tied at one point also. So they've had a couple of games before this. Me and you kind of differed on our podcast earlier in the week. I kind of felt that game was never really in doubt, honestly. Once Jefferson got up a couple of scores, I felt the game was over. I'm not surprised Carver scored. That's a solid team. They're going to get some points. But it was 28-22. They scored in the final minute, and they had to have an onside kick. I mean, that was the only real stress play Jefferson had the entire game.
Well, I don't know about the only stress play. I will say, and I don't think we disagree as much as you think we do. I agree Jefferson was in control of that game from the start, but what I mean by getting pressed is Carver was able to put pressure on Jefferson's defense. They moved the ball against Jefferson's defense better and more consistently than I've seen any offense do all year, to be quite honest with you. And we saw them play Rabun County and Flowery Branch, some really good offenses they played this year. Didn't get a chance to see them against North Oconee, but I think they would have won that game anyway. But in the second half, that was a 21-14 game with about 6 or 7 minutes to play. And really, with the way that game was going, I felt like Jefferson had to put a scoring drive together, because if not, I felt like Carver was going to come back down and tie the game. And sure enough, they did end up scoring again. They ended with 22 points on the scoreboard. But Malachi Starks and his running inside, and it wasn't the big runs. It wasn't the big explosive 40, 50-yard touchdown runs that we've seen him pull off. He had to kind of get it done, grind it out between the tackles, and that's what he was able to do. Got down the field, got in the end zone for the touchdown that ended up being what won the game.
Right. Malachi, you can demoralize a team by having explosive plays. You can also demoralize a team by just, I'm going to get 4 yards every play. You can't stop it. I'm going to get 5 yards every play. You can't stop it. 5 minutes, click off the clock. They're still grinding away at your defense. That can wear a team down. And that's why I felt like, you said they were in control. I never really worried that, I knew they would get the onside kick. And even if they hadn't, in some fluke play, I felt that they would have stopped Carver.
I don't feel like Carver would have gone down in 25 seconds, but they certainly had the athletes to do it. And Devin Riles, the quarterback for Carver, had a great game. Moving on to Rabun County, we alluded to them a little bit earlier. The quarterfinal round has been a bugaboo for that program for several years, and it looked like it might be that again last week. Bleckley County ties the game up. They go to overtime. Bleckley County's knocking on the door to score what looks like a go-ahead touchdown. But the Rabun County defense with one of the best defensive stands I think we've ever seen in a playoff game in this area, with a goal line stand on 3 straight plays to force the field goal, sets up Gunnar Stockton with a walk-off TD.
Well, yeah, and that's when we were talking about the Buford defense. Look, this is how you get into the semifinals. This is how you get into the championship game. They won. They've only been in the semifinals. This is now just their second time, but they've proven that once they can get past the quarterfinal, they can get into the championship game. I mean, one game is a small sample size, but they understand the coaching staff. Most of it's intact. A lot of these players, a good chunk of these players some of them were on the team. They were around the program. They know what they need to do.
They were the seniors on this year's Rabun County team were freshmen on that team that went to the state title game.
That's correct. So a lot of these guys, were either making some contributions or they're around the program. The quarterfinal has been tough because, they're not built with a lot of speed and a lot of huge size on defense. I mean, just because of where they are, and they run into these South Georgia teams. They got 100-man rosters, and they're big, they're fast, and that's what's gotten them. Fitzgerald got them a couple years ago. That's what's gotten them. Thomasville last year, I believe. So this was psychologically a huge just shot in the arm for the program to say, look, and they faced 3 big running teams in a row in the playoffs, and they managed to get by all of them. So you got to feel like they have, are they going to be a favorite on the road at Callaway? There's some incredible stats in this.
The Maxwell ratings have them as has Rabun County as a touchdown favorite in that game.
Well, I'm going to tell you, this is going to be the biggest test they've got so far. Callaway's 29-1 at home in their last 30 games. Their only loss was last year in the semifinals. In that span, they're, I think, 5 or 6-0 at home this year. Rabun County, those undefeated on the road, but they're only 1-4 in road playoff games in their history. So there's some things working for Callaway, working against Rabun. But what does Rabun have? They got Gunnar Stockton, they got Adriel Clark,
and a defense that's improving.
And that defense is better than the numbers indicate, I believe, because when you have an offense where there was a playoff game where they had like 6 or 7 drives of 3 plays or less. I mean, you're putting your defense on the field a lot, and they're only giving up 15 points a game, 17 points a game. The defense is much better than the numbers indicate.
By the way, Adriel Clark, the star receiver for Rabun County, also with an interception on defense for the Rabun County Wildcats in that win over Bleckley County.
But one more real quick. Gunnar Stockton, Adriel Clark, with 1 touchdown combination this week, they will become the state's most prolific touchdown combo in history. Adriel Clark, 27 touchdown receptions in a season. That is tied for the all-time state record. One more, he'll hold it as a receiver, but it takes a quarterback to throw you the passes, so they would be the most lethal combination in the history of the state of Georgia. And I think that is just a remarkable stat. And Gunnar is climbing the state leaderboard with every game.
Considering they've done it in just 1 year, certainly is. Last game that we had last week was Commerce. They fall again in a heartbreaker to Irwin County, this time at home. Only it was the reverse of what happened last time, whereas last time it was Commerce with the 2-touchdown lead late in the game and Irwin County pulling the comeback. This time it was Irwin County with the double-digit lead late and Commerce falling just short on the comeback in the final minutes.
Well, it was Seth, you were there videoing, and I was watching that game on the NFHS network. Irwin was huge. I mean, they looked
very large,
monstrously bigger than Commerce. That was a gutsy game effort by the Tigers. And you could see, we talked about this on the podcast.
Yeah, in the podcast, you could see them physically moving that line, how impressive that was for that Commerce team to see them just gutting it out and physically moving that line that looked so much bigger than them.
But I saw at least half a dozen, almost a dozen times where the defensive linemen on Irwin, they were getting visibly, frustrated that they couldn't make plays.
And Sammy Brown for Commerce, what a game he had.
By the way, he's a freshman.
Yeah, if Commerce goes on to win that game, Sammy Brown writes his name already into Commerce lore because he was having a night against Irwin County. Over 200 yards, is that right, that he ended with?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, 25-21, though, they fall to Irwin County. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the games we've got coming up next week. And first off, Buford Valdosta. I don't think we need to say a whole lot more than that.
That's it. No, the all-time winningest program in the state of Georgia versus the state's winningest program since 2000. Buford has 11 state titles, I believe, since then. Valdosta, 24, I believe, overall, but they've only had 2 since 2000, and they got rush probes. So there's you just spin a wheel and there's 1,000 storylines.
I think every media outlet in the state of Georgia will be at this game, including us.
Including
AM 550 WDUN, you'll be able to catch Buford and Valdosta on FM 102.9. Jefferson going to be traveling down to Savannah to take on Benedictine, and this is an interesting Benedictine team, Jeff, because looking at them, they run a lot of spread stuff and wing T stuff.
Yeah, it's I almost kind of like to get a look at that. Because like, how do you run a wing T out of a spread formation and vice versa?
Well, they run both formations.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, you would think that you're telegraphing what you do, and yet they're still one of the top scoring teams in Class 4A. I've seen Benedictine play a couple of times in the state championship game. They've been explosive on offense always, but their defense has always been very good. Defensively, they're not world beaters on defense. I think that's the matchup right there. I think if Jefferson is able to have their way with that Benedictine defense, I think they can take the Cadets offense a little bit out of that game.
And Jefferson's got a pretty good defense of their own, by the way, so that should be a fun matchup, too. But again, Jefferson at Benedictine, you can hear it on FM 102.9. Rabun County trying to get to just their second-ever state title game. You alluded to it earlier, at Callaway. This should be a pretty good one because you've got, a very big and physical Callaway football team against a Rabun County team that has kind of known that this type of team, what they're going to see in Callaway, is exactly what they're going to need to beat to finally capture that state championship.
And something's going to have to give. Callaway's 0-4 all-time in semifinal games. They've never made it to the championship game, but for the last 5 years, they've been at this very spot. Haven't been able to break through. Rabun's only 1-4 on the road in the playoffs all time, but they're 1-0 in the semifinals. I think this has last week's game was a classic in Tiger. This could be a classic down in Hogansville. But I normally I'm a defensive guy. But when you also have the best 2 players, perhaps, on the field, and they're going to have Gunnar Stockton, they're going to have Adriel Clark, I'm gonna say that combination will be the difference.
So it's time, and by the way, we'll have some video highlights of that for you.
I'm traveling down there.
Courtesy of Seth Chapman, who will be in LaGrange to get us some video on that game. But right now, he's sitting right over there, and it's time for Seths Picks.
Yes, like we said, we've been doing it a little bit different this time where I pick the picks, and we kind of analyze them. So we'll go straight into it, guys. I've also realized I'm not really looking into the camera when I'm talking to the audience. In my edits, I realize I'm looking at you guys when I should be talking to the audience. but I also have to look at the screen. So we'll start off with Buford.
Let's be honest. We're more important than the audience. I mean, let's just be real about the situation.
I don't know that I would look at
guys.
the camera. You don't really have a good side, Seth, so I'm not really sure how you should do that.
Listen, I know, but I just kind of suck it up for this segment, and I just appear on camera.
I've been wanting to appear as the unknown sports writer and just put a bag over my face because I don't like the way I look.
We can make that happen. We can make that happen.
We might be able to make that happen.
Well, if I'm on the
pretty
show
sure
next
everybody
week,
will
maybe I'll do
recognize
that.
your voice, though, Jeff.
That's true.
I can disguise it.
That's
No,
not
you
working.
can't. Let's go to Seths Picks.
All right, here we go. We start off with Buford. I believe this was like either the second or the very first highlight on the reel for Buford. Just this incredible stop.
Oh.
Yeah, when you're just trying to run an inside give and somebody blows it up that quickly, you know it's going to be a long night.
Yeah, that's one of the moments. Like for me, if it was me there, I just got hit like that. I'd be basically doing exactly what that kid's doing, just sitting there like, all right.
They have pancake blocks. Is that a pancake tackle?
You know the bad part about that play is the running back will get the lost yardage on his stats, and it had nothing to do with him.
Yeah, 53, 57, 55. Did they touch anybody?
I'm not sure. But we got more Buford defense coming up here.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
plenty
Next
from this
up.
game.
Look out.
Tommy Bugles this time.
Our friend. And a little celebration after. I like that. I dig that.
Yeah, Tommy Bugles is a explosive playmaker on defense. We talk about explosive playmakers on offense. Tommy Bugles is an explosive playmaker on defense.
He had a huge state title game last year. He made some monster plays. He's as much a key to that team as any offensive player.
Absolutely.
And then, as I've been saying this entire time, some more of the usual suspects.
Speaking of key offensive players, Gabe Irwin Jr.
Oh, yeah, with the spinning.
I feel like we've got a
landing in the
highlight
end zone.
from him every week.
Oh, yeah, we do, basically. That's why I say usual suspect.
Yeah, he's a fun runner to watch.
Oh, yeah, we got one more up for Buford, I believe. Here we go.
Yeah, Buford's offensive line was just carving open holes. I think they have
clean and clear. That's kind of what I liked so much about this one was that, you see him disappear for a bit, and then if we can get it back to where I need to be there. See him disappear, and then he finds that hole and sprints through. I kind of expected him to come through that bigger hole that we saw kind of on the side profile over here.
There were a couple of them, though.
Yeah, there were a couple. He
had
a choice.
Like in the Commerce game, talk about some frustrated defenders. I saw about 10 or 11 of them on there for Hughes because, they just almost no resistance.
Well, by this point, this game was already over.
Yeah. You wonder, when this was their first ever visit up to Tom Ryden Stadium, so you wonder, do teams leave after their first visit and go, I never want to see that place again?
I'm sure they just go ahead and keep on I-85 when they get to the 985 split in the future. I think they just keep rolling up into Jackson County.
And our last one from Buford. We have this incredible tackle for what a loss.
What was he doing there?
He was just trying to get rid of the ball because it was about to be about a 15-yard loss on the play.
Oh, yeah.
Then that's intentional grounding, so I had another 15.
Yeah, because that did not reach. Was that ruled a fumble? I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
They ruled it a fumble because the ref put his hand up, so they called this a fumble.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Right, and then we will move on from Buford to our other game that we had highlights of, Commerce.
Yeah, this one hurt.
From Irwin County. The first play.
And this is the first play from scrimmage. Irwin County scores a touchdown and really set the tone.
It did, but it also says that Commerce outplayed them the rest of the way.
They did, but they had to play from behind the rest of the way, and that play was part of why.
Yeah. Our next one.
Here he comes.
There he
is.
Brown. Sammy Brown. We discussed this already. That kid's a freshman.
He's a large. There are some freshman linemen that are.
We got two in a row from him. Another one right here.
There's a
77 yards
right here.
77-yard touchdown run.
He's gone.
It's unfair for a freshman that big to be able to move that fast once he hit the sideline.
Not only was he moving fast, but he broke away once he was in a dead sprint. Those long strides. I'm gonna tell you, There's been some fantastic running backs to come through Commerce. I think that 4 years of starting, I think he has a chance to make an assault on the record books at Commerce.
Very much so.
If he stays healthy the whole year.
If Commerce can continue to put the other pieces in that triple option backfield to keep defenses honest, Sammy Brown's going to have a lot of field days on some interior defenses.
Here is something that hasn't been talked about with Commerce, and I know that we're in the middle of these highlights, but I did some research last week. If Commerce wins that game and gets into the semifinals, Okay, they're into their third semifinals in 8 years under Michael Brown, which would have been the fastest of any Commerce coach in history. And there's been some great Commerce coach, Ray Lamb, Steve Savage. I mean, you've had some great coaches at Commerce. That would have been the fastest and arguably the toughest time to try to get to the semifinals in probably the history of the state.
And consider for a while also that he was coaching in Class 1A at a time where Class 1A was brutal because they hadn't yet split into public and private.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
So the Athens Academies and the Elkas and the Prince Avenue Christians who were building themselves up were competing with the public schools at the time also.
That's correct. I tell you, Commerce is one of those programs. Since I moved to town, they've been a program that's always been good. I think, they're on the rise, believe it or not, even though they're already there. I think that as long as Sammy stays healthy, they get some guys to help him out. And, I don't know how you combat just, size and speed that other teams have, but this is a program that they're going to be there for a while.
All right, so our next play, guys. Last one of the highlights, I believe.
Not another one.
Yeah. I mean, it's just great ball placement.
That's a great catch.
That's a great pass and a great catch.
And a key play in that game.
Yep,
Commerce had been able to kind of grind them and get back in the game, and they pop another big pass when they were look and run, and that ended up being the difference in the game. But, you said you talked to Coach Brown. He kind of faulted himself for not kicking.
Seth did. Seth caught up with him.
Not kicking a field goal at the end of the first half or in the first half. It's easy to go to that and say, well, kick a field goal, then you have a field goal at the end. But, when you do that, you would have changed the sequence of the game. Your Commerce, you can run the ball. It's 4th and 2 or 3. I think you're going for it every time.
All right, time to wrap this thing up, and let's go ahead and get to the
WilHart Team of the Week.
And we actually have the heart part of WilHart in now, finally. How's it feel to be voting on your own Team of the Week for the first time in like 2 months?
I just, I've talked to my lawyers about their copyright infringement that should have been used all along.
Listen, I've been trying to get this name changed for a while,
The deposition is coming.
Okay,
that's all I can tell you.
Here's your deposition. Who's your pick for Team of the Week?
Who are the choices?
The teams that were playing last week.
Okay, so just football teams.
If you got another athletic team you want to volunteer, go for it.
I'm going to throw out the Johnson boys basketball team because the other night they won their first region game in over 4 years.
Okay.
And they look like a team on the rise right now as we're getting ready to get into Lanier Land and continue, hopefully be able to get through the season in basketball. But, it's a big accomplishment. I mean, it's been rebuilding and in a pretty good region, and they got a region win.
Coach Guthrie doing a good job over there. But, Seth, what is your pick for Team of the Week?
My pick for Team of the Week. It's a very hard week. We get into these weeks, and it's always very, very hard for me to choose. Man.
Apparently.
Do we have some dramatic music to lay
I'm sure I'll lay it in there.
It was like Godfather music would have been perfect right there.
I've got to say Rabun County. I'm going with Rabun.
The overtime win.
Oh, yeah, I'm going for Rabun. When it came down to it, they put it together and got through.
I am very happy, Seth, that you picked Rabun County because that's exactly who I was going to pick.
Yay!
Finally getting past the quarterfinal round, which I know that was a little bit of a bugaboo for Jefferson, too, to get through Carver, Columbus.
It's the second time you've used the phrase bugaboo.
Yeah, well, I like it. It's a good word. It's.
I'm not even sure it's a word.
It's a word. It's 3 syllables, which 3-syllable words are always good.
Okay,
it rolls off the tongue well. So but I know Jefferson kind of had to overcome that too. But the way Rabun County won that game, having to get that defensive stand there at the goal line in overtime. I'm going with the Wildcats. So congratulations to Rabun County by a 2-1 vote. You are this week's
WilHart Team of the Week.
All right, so that's going to do it for us here on Access Sports Weekly. Remember, AM 550 WDUN, Buford hosting Valdosta, FM 102.9, Jefferson at Benedictine. What happened? Did I miss something? No, you guys.
What do you mean?
You guys were laughing. I was wondering if I was.
I'm laughing at Jeff because every time I do every time that the voice gets done, and of course revealing behind the curtain that I am the deep voice guy, which I don't think anybody.
No,
knew
I don't
that
think anybody doubted.
Yeah, I don't think anybody doubted that. But he does the same joke where he looks around like it's coming from somewhere except right here.
I do that just
like
to see
we're
if I
not
can
running
get
an
him to
internal
laugh.
system
See, he's
so
easy.
that it couldn't come
I try
from
to get him
anywhere.
to laugh. That's my goal in the show every time.
So every time I just see him do it every time. And this is the first time I've seen it in a long time, so I laughed. Sorry.
There you go.
Good times. Well, folks, that's going to do it for us. Head to accesswdun.com and the sports section, and we'll have lots of more great stuff for you. Follow us on Twitter at AccessWDUN Sports, and on Friday, follow us at Friday Game Night for updates on all of those state semifinal games, because we are going to be loaded down with Buford, Jefferson, and Rabun County. On behalf of Jeff, Seth, I'm Caleb. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.